All right, everyone, we're a couple of weeks out from the Iowa vote. By the way, again, I say that all of my fans that are in Iowa, whether you're registered or not, look into how you can get registered. Vote for Joe Biden in Iowa. Try to deprive Bernie Sanders. It'd be funny to see his fans, flip out at this point almost as much as it would be to get Biden nominated, because seeing him up on the debate stage with Trump would be the funniest thing ever. At this point, partially it's just for the lulz. I mean, Sanders, it'd be funny to see Sanders debate Trump too. I wouldn't be terribly upset if he got nominated, but that makes Vermont a laughingstock when he loses, so I would prefer to see Biden. Even Warren. Actually, I can't lose. It doesn't even matter who's nominated. The clown car is so packed with lunatics it almost doesn't matter who wins at this point. But I think Biden would be the funniest, so I encourage you to vote for him. Anyway, now, the Sanders campaign has decided to attack Joe Biden, which makes sense because you're going into Iowa and New Hampshire. And part of it is they've dug out the skeleton of what the Democrats run on every 4 years anyway, which is somebody's coming for your Social Security. This is an age-old concept. The Democrats do this every 4 years. Trump's going to cut Social Security. They're doing it now, by the way, as well, saying that he wants to cut it. That's not actually the case. He wants to tighten up disability payments a little bit because there are some people that are not genuinely disabled that get disability anyway, that are able to work but don't. It's a problem. Not a huge problem. That's a Republican throwaway every 4 years. I'm going to stop waste, fraud, and abuse. Okay, you saved 10 grand after a $2 million study. Wonderful. With the Democrats, though, every 4 years they talk about how somebody's coming to very spookily arrive in the night like the Grim Reaper and slice your Social Security payments. Ha ha ha. It's a thing that they do. It's like they bring up Roe v. Wade every 4 years. You could have a Republican there who literally says, like has jars of aborted fetus on the desk in the White House and says, oh, I love abortion so much, I think everyone should have one, and they would still claim that Roe v. Wade was endangered by their administration. So, it's funny. Bernie Sanders decided to dig up clips of Joe Biden talking about spending freezes, and my suggestion to Biden has come out and said that these were selectively edited. Kinda, but not really. It's a half-truth. If you limit it to just the clips that have been put out, it misses the larger context of talking in the 2018 clip that's being most widely circulated. He's referring to Paul Ryan's work. He's talking about past cutting that was suggested or passed by the Republicans in the House. Joe Biden came out, and he was not a proponent of all of these things, but he had come out as well in the past, and he's alluding to other clips that were put out as well, including one from 1995. I think Biden was in the legislature at the time, if I remember correctly, talking about cuts from the Reagan era and saying that he had been in favor of these various spending freezes. Biden should not have come out and said that these were altered because fundamentally they're not. They're limited in terms of the clip length in order to present a skewed message about what he's saying. But they're not altered in and of themselves. So that's bad perception, bad optics. What he should do is just own up to it and say, yeah, that's me. That's what I said. You're talking about the 1990s, different economic situation. You can brush it aside, not too difficult to do. Reagan and others that were supposedly the big hatchet men of the boogeyman far-right era never cut these things. They had spending freezes. The idea under Reaganomics was this. Government spending per capita as a total proportion of the economy had become excessive. The proportion of government allocated funding to the private economy was too lopsided. What Reagan did was spend several years simply refusing to increase the budgets of bureaucracy, military, and things of that nature, including Social Security. He was attacked in his re-election bid by Mondale and the Democrats as though he had wanted to cut everything under the sun, but he never did. He never cut anything. Or only just barely. He gave a haircut to some bureaus, if I remember correctly. He left Social Security alone, along with all of these other things. He was not a cutter. He was simply a reductionist with regards to these things. And the way he reduced isn't to directly do so. It was just to allow private growth to catch up. So that the proportion of private ownership of basically the productive capacity of the economy became greater. The ratio was greater than it was before. Not by a huge amount, but a little bit. It undid a decade's worth of regulatory damage. That's, by the way, what Trump's been doing. Trump has been cutting regulations. Across the board, he has cut more regulations than he's added. You're adding a considerably lower amount. You're cutting a lot of what's there. Budget haircuts have been profuse. Has Trump massively cut any of these budgets? Has he endangered at large Social Security or any other government program? No. He has simply limited their growth or given them a trim or reconfigured things to make them more efficient. Again, exactly like Ronald Reagan. The payoff has been similar. And if Donald Trump were less obtuse in his wording, if he were more of a if he were more congenial towards the legacy media, they'd be treating him like another Ronald Reagan. He would right now be riding in the mid-50s approval-wise, easy, possibly higher. He'd be coasting to re-election, and the Democrats wouldn't even bother discussing things. That's really what this is about. So what I look at when I see Joe Biden's clip, I say, why don't you just be the only Democrat in the room who's sane? Why don't you be the moderate Democrat who understands the basic premise of economics and say, yes, I supported the idea of a spending freeze. It was the right thing to do. This was back in the 1980s through the early 90s when we were doing these things. It worked. The private economy surged. That's what happened. Own up to the 95 clip. As far as the 2018 clip discussing fucking Paul Ryan's maneuvers, who cares, dude? Like, you can't work with... This is a big problem of Joe Biden, is he backed down on this before, too. Like, when he said, oh, back in the 70s, I worked with... I can't remember the names of these congressmen he was working with, and they were segregationists, but I worked with them anyway. Joe Biden was dogpiled by the other Democrats and came out and said, well, in retrospect, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have worked with them. It was a good thing that you were able to work with people you totally disagreed with, even if you found them despicable. That's how proper government works. The reason the government doesn't work well right now is people refuse to do that. Joe Biden has the opportunity to cast himself as different from the entire rest of the field other than maybe Tulsi Gabbard by saying, hey, I understand economics. I understand that what Sanders is offering you is bullshit. He's peddling garbage. It's pie in the sky fucking bullshit, unicorns and rainbow sprinkles. Elizabeth Warren is the same thing. She's peddling the same gobbledygook nonsense. Andrew Yang's UBI is stupid. The very premise is an anathema to the concept of a good economy. None of these people make sense. Michael Bloomberg is just a rich hack, doesn't even understand what he's talking about. He's too busy trying to ban the big gulp. And then Buttigieg, he shouldn't bother attacking him because Buttigieg is semi-sane. So, and also he's on his way down. So, don't kick a horse when he's down. At least seem a little bit merciful. Don't even bring him up. At this point, Buttigieg had his shot. He's probably done. He squandered his moment and let Bloomberg take all of the airtime away from him. Just at the wrong moment. Poor Buttigieg. At least he's young enough so he can run for the next 6 or 7 times. Joe Biden has this in the bag, but Joe Biden is his own worst enemy when he comes out and says that this is doctored, which it's clearly not. No, it's framed improperly. It lacks the larger, broader context of what Biden's actually talking about. I saw the 95 clip and stuff. It would be nice if you could supply the full clip. Biden should have done that. Put it in context. Then say, yeah, I argued for economic principles that worked, which sets me apart from the rest of the Dem field. He could have turned this into a victory. He decided not to. That's classic Joe Biden. You hand him a possibility like that, and normally, strategically, he's not quick enough to take advantage of it. He reacts more defensively. His staff, it seems, do the same thing. He could have turned this into a victory, and it's rather sad because if he had done that, if he had taken the wind out of Bernie's sails one more time, he'd go into Iowa and win. Now it's more hazard. The thing is that Bernie Sanders is trying to convince people that Joe Biden wants to take their Social Security away now. This is clearly not the case. This is clearly not true. It is objectively false in every way. Joe Biden is a leftist in the general sense. Not only would he not cut it, he would want to pump more funny money into it. Social Security is not really socialized anyway. It should be voluntary. There should be at least a private option or the option to sit it out. I know I would because Social Security is so poorly rigged. But essentially, the idea is you pay money in, you pull the money out later. It's just a savings program. It's your money that you're taking, so it's not welfare or socialism. It just should be voluntary. The fact that it hasn't been rendered that way by a SCOTUS decision is due to their reluctance to take such a case more than because of any constitutional rigor to defend the program. It's very funny, but poor Joe Biden. He's handed lemons, and instead of making lemonade, he just sits there sucking on the lemons, looking like a moron to the rest of the world. That's about all. Peace out.